The story that I got for you today is called The Sinister Creators of the Fourth World, and this is how it goes. In the quiet, conservative town of Christchurch, New Zealand, the winter of 1954 would be forever marred by a crime so brutal, so unthinkable, that it would leave an indelible scar on the community. So, on June 22, 1954, Honora Reaper went for a walk with her teenage daughter, Pauline Parker, and Pauline's close friend, Juliet Hulme. Now, what should have been an ordinary outing on a crisp afternoon was, in fact, the final act in a chilling conspiracy. A conspiracy born not in the world of reality, but in the shadowy depths of a shared delusion the girls called the Fourth World. Pauline and Juliet's friendship from the outside seemed like a typical teenage bond. Both girls were exceptionally bright and had been isolated by serious illnesses in their early years. Pauline with osteomyelitis and Juliet with tuberculosis. They met at Christchurch Girls' High School and quickly became inseparable, finding in each other a refuge from the loneliness that had defined much of their childhoods. But their connection ran deeper than mere friendship. It was an obsession that would eventually drive them to murder. The Fourth World was not just a game. It was their reality, an elaborate and dark fantasy that consumed their waking hours. It was a realm where they believed they could transcend the mundane and enter a higher plane of existence. The girls saw themselves as creators and rulers in this world, casting off the moral constraints of their upbringing in favor of a self-made universe where they alone dictated the rules. Christianity was discarded as the girls invented their own religion, complete with saints of their choosing and rituals that bound them closer together. In the Fourth World, Pauline and Juliet imagined themselves as immortal beings, destined to achieve greatness together. They wrote plays, stories, and poems that detailed their adventures in this parallel dimension, each creation further blurring the lines between fantasy and reality. The girls' parents were concerned about the intensity of their relationship, but the true depths of their obsession remained hidden, even as it spiraled out of control. The Fourth World became their sanctuary, but it was also the crucible in which their darkest desires were forged. You see, in 1954, when Juliet's parents decided to separate and made plans to send Juliet to South Africa, the girls were faced with the prospect of being torn apart. For Pauline and Juliet, this was not just a painful separation. It was the destruction of their entire world. They were convinced that they could not survive without each other, that their destinies were intertwined in a way that no one else could understand. To them, the only solution was to eliminate the one obstacle that stood between them and their future together, which was Pauline's mother, Honora. The plan was cold and calculated, yet it was conceived in the fevered minds of two teenagers who saw themselves as living in a world of their own making. They believed that by removing Honora, they'd be free to pursue their dream of running away together, perhaps to Hollywood or even New York, where they imagined they could live out their lives as celebrated writers and filmmakers. It was a fantasy as grandiose as it was deadly. On that fateful day in June, Pauline and Juliet led Honora into Victoria Park, a secluded area they had chosen specifically for its isolation. And as they walked along that path, the girls were a picture of calm, their demeanor betraying nothing of the storm of emotions raging inside them. Honora, unaware of the deadly trap that was being sprung, walked alongside her daughter, trusting as any mother would. The trio paused at a cafe for tea, a brief respite before the horrors to come. And as they continued to walk, Pauline and Juliet exchanged a glance This was the moment that they had planned for, and in a flash, the girls launched their attack. With a brick concealed in a stocking, they bludgeoned Honora with a ferocity that even shocked themselves. The first blow was met with a cry of pain, but it wasn't enough. The girl struck again and again, the brick smashing into Honora's skull, her screams echoing through the trees until they were silenced forever. The murder was brutal, savage, and over within minutes. Honora's body lay crumpled on the ground, her blood staining the earth beneath her. And the girls, now drenched in blood, were momentarily frozen, stunned by the reality of what they had just done. But now there was no going back. They had crossed the line that could never be uncrossed, so faking panic, they ran back to the cafe, shouting for help. "Please help us! Mommy is hurt, covered in blood!" Pauline cried, her voice filled with false terror. The cafe owner, startled by the sight of the two blood-soaked girls, rushed to the scene but quickly realized that this was no accident. The brutality of the attack, the blood, the weapon, it was all too much to be explained away by a simple fall. The truth was glaring, undeniable, and when the police arrived, they found the murder weapon, the stocking with the brick still inside, discarded in the bushes. The girl's story fell apart almost immediately, and under interrogation, they confessed to everything. Pauline's diary, filled with chilling entries that detailed their plan, was the final nail in their coffin. In one entry, Pauline wrote of their excitement and anticipation as they prepared to carry out the murder, likening it to the thrill of planning a surprise party. The trial that followed was a media sensation, filled with all these details and rampant speculation about the girls' relationship. The defense argued insanity, claiming that the girls were delusional, driven to murder by a twisted sense of reality. The prosecution, however, painted a picture of cold-blooded killers who had meticulously planned and executed a brutal murder. The truth, perhaps, lay somewhere in between, a toxic combination of delusion and intent. And on August 28, 1954, Pauline and Juliet were convicted of murder. Too young for the death penalty, they were sentenced to 5 years in prison, and upon their release, they were ordered never to contact each other again. Juliet moved to England and eventually became a successful crime novelist under the pseudonym Anne Perry, her past remaining a dark secret until the release of Peter Jackson's Heavenly Creatures in 1994. Pauline, adopting the name Hilary Nathan, led a quiet, reclusive life in England, seeking redemption through the Catholic faith. The fourth world, the fantasy that once had been their sanctuary, had led them down a path of destruction. What began as a deep, intense friendship had morphed into something far darker, a bond that culminated in cold-blooded murder. In the end, the girls' shared delusion shattered not only their lives, but also the life of an innocent woman, whose trust in her daughter was repaid with unimaginable violence. Their story serves as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface, the thin line between fantasy and reality, and the terrible consequences when that line is crossed. To watch more, make sure to follow and to give this a like. Thank you, and cheers.